It was a crisp autumn afternoon in the bustling city of Denver, Colorado. Dr. Elena Martinez, a renowned pediatric surgeon, walked into a small, cozy bookstore nestled between a cafe and a florist. She was dressed casually in a beige trench coat, black slacks, and comfortable flats, blending seamlessly with the crowd of book lovers browsing the shelves. Her calm demeanor and unassuming presence gave no hint of the countless lives she had saved in the operating room or the battles she had fought to break barriers in a male-dominated field. Elena cherished these quiet moments away from the hospital, where she could lose herself in the pages of a good book. She wandered through the aisles, her fingers gently tracing the spines of novels, until a sudden commotion disrupted the peaceful atmosphere. At the end of the aisle, a man in a sharp business suit, Mr. Daniel Harper, a well-known corporate lawyer, knocked over a stack of books while reaching for a bestseller. The books tumbled to the floor, scattering across the aisle. Daniel glanced at the mess, shrugged, and walked away as if nothing had happened. Elena paused, her sharp eyes catching every detail. As a surgeon, she was trained to be meticulous and accountable, and Daniel's careless attitude struck a nerve. She stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, sir. You dropped these books. It would be considerate to pick them up so the staff doesn't have to." Daniel turned, his eyes narrowing as he assessed Elena. He smirked, his tone dripping with condescension. "And who are you to tell me what to do? I'm a busy man. I don't have time for trivialities." Elena remained composed, though her eyes flashed with determination. Being busy doesn't excuse disrespect. This isn't just about the books. It's about setting an example for others. Daniel laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You think you're some kind of moral authority? Please, I don't need life lessons from someone like you." The tension in the bookstore grew palpable. Other customers began to notice the confrontation, their curious gazes shifting between Elena and Daniel. Elena, however, stood her ground. She had faced far greater challenges in her career, and she wasn't about to back down now. "This isn't about me," she said, her voice steady. "It's about basic decency. You're in a public space, and your actions affect everyone around you." Daniel's smirk faded, replaced by a scowl. "You're wasting my time. If you care so much, why don't you pick them up yourself?" Elena's patience was wearing thin, but she refused to let his arrogance provoke her. "I'm not the one who made the mess, but since you're unwilling to take responsibility, I'll do it. Not for you, but for the staff and the other customers." As she bent down to gather the books, a young woman stepped forward to help. "Thank you," the woman said softly. "Not everyone would stand up to someone like him." Elena smiled warmly. "It's important to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable." Daniel, now visibly irritated, snapped, "You think you're so righteous, don't you? But let me tell you something. People like you are all the same, always trying to prove something." Elena straightened, her gaze locking onto his. "People like me? What exactly do you mean by that?" Daniel hesitated, realizing he had crossed a line. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Elena interrupted, her voice firm but not raised. "And it's exactly that kind of attitude that perpetuates inequality and disrespect. You may think your status gives you the right to look down on others, but true respect is earned through actions, not titles." The bookstore fell silent, the weight of Elena's words hanging in the air. Daniel, for the first time, seemed at a loss for words. He glanced around, noticing the disapproving stares of the other customers. Flustered, he muttered, "This is ridiculous," before storming out of the store. Elena watched him go, her heart still pounding but her resolve unshaken. She knew that standing up to someone like Daniel wasn't just about one incident. It was about challenging a culture of entitlement and disrespect. The young woman who had helped her earlier approached again. "That was incredible," she said. "I wish I had your courage." Elena smiled. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. And trust me, it gets easier with practice." As Elena left the bookstore, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She knew that her actions might not change Daniel's behavior overnight, but they had sparked a conversation and inspired others to stand up for what they believed in. In the weeks that followed, the incident became a talking point in the community. A video of the confrontation, recorded by another customer, went viral on social media, drawing attention to the importance of accountability and respect. Elena, though reluctant to be in the spotlight, used the platform to advocate for kindness and integrity in everyday interactions. Daniel, on the other hand, faced backlash for his behavior. His firm received numerous complaints, and he was forced to issue a public apology. While some dismissed it as insincere, others saw it as a step toward accountability. For Elena, the experience was a reminder that change often begins with small, courageous acts. She continued her work at the hospital, saving lives and mentoring young doctors, but she also became a vocal advocate for social justice, using her voice to challenge inequality and inspire others to do the same. As she walked through the hospital corridors one evening, a colleague stopped her. "Dr. Martinez, I saw the video. What you did was amazing." Elena shook her head modestly. "I just did what anyone should do. We all have a responsibility to stand up for what's right." Her colleague smiled. "Maybe so, but not everyone has the courage to do it. You're an inspiration." Elena's heart swelled with gratitude, but she knew her work was far from over. The fight for justice and equality was ongoing, and she was determined to keep pushing forward, one small act of courage at a time. 2 weeks after the incident at the bookstore, Daniel Harper's life took an unexpected turn. His youngest son, 8-year-old Liam, had been complaining of severe stomach pain all morning. By midday, the pain had become unbearable, and Liam was writhing in agony, his small face pale and drenched in sweat. Daniel, usually composed and unshakable, felt a wave of panic he hadn't experienced in years. He rushed Liam to Denver General Hospital, his mind racing with fear. The emergency room was a blur of activity. Nurses rushing by, monitors beeping, and the faint smell of antiseptic filling the air. Daniel clutched Liam's hand as they were ushered into an examination room. His heart pounded as he watched his son's tiny body tremble with pain. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt utterly powerless. The door swung open, and a doctor entered, her face calm and focused. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was her, the woman from the bookstore, Dr. Elena Martinez. Elena's eyes flickered with recognition as she glanced at Daniel, but she didn't pause. Her attention immediately shifted to Liam, who was now whimpering softly. She moved with practiced efficiency, checking his vitals and gently palpating his abdomen. "What are his symptoms?" she asked, her voice steady and professional. Daniel struggled to find his words. "He's been in pain all morning. Sharp pains in his stomach. He's been vomiting, and he can't keep anything down." Elena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It could be appendicitis. We'll need to run some tests to confirm, but if it is, we'll need to operate immediately." Daniel's stomach churned. "Operate? But he's just a kid." Elena cut him off, her tone firm but not unkind. "Appendicitis can be life-threatening if not treated quickly. We'll take good care of him." Daniel swallowed hard, his mind racing. He wanted to argue, to demand a second opinion, but the sight of Liam's pale face stopped him. He nodded reluctantly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do whatever you need to do." Elena gave a curt nod and turned to the nurse beside her. "Prep him for an ultrasound and blood work. We need to move fast." As the nurses began to wheel Liam away, Daniel reached out, his hand trembling. "Wait, can I stay with him?" Elena hesitated, then shook her head. "Not during the tests, but I'll keep you updated. Wait here." Daniel watched helplessly as his son was taken away, the weight of his fear pressing down on him like a physical force. He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of tears in his eyes. An hour later, Elena returned, her expression unreadable. Daniel jumped to his feet, his heart in his throat. "How is he? What's wrong?" "It's appendicitis," Elena confirmed. "His appendix is inflamed and needs to be removed. We're prepping him for surgery now." Daniel's knees nearly buckled. "Surgery? But what if something goes wrong?" Elena met his gaze, her eyes steady. "I've performed this procedure countless times. Your son is in good hands." Daniel stared at her, a flood of emotions crashing over him. Fear, guilt, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Dr. Martinez, I need to apologize." Elena raised an eyebrow, surprised but not interrupting. Daniel took a shaky breath. "At the bookstore, I was arrogant and disrespectful. I had no right to treat you that way. And now, here you are, saving my son's life. I don't know what to say." Elena studied him for a moment, her expression softening slightly. "This isn't about us, Mr. Harper. This is about your son. Right now, my only focus is making sure he gets through this safely." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "I understand. But still, thank you. For everything." Elena gave a small nod. "Wait here. I'll update you as soon as the surgery is over." The next 2 hours were the longest of Daniel's life. He paced the waiting room, his mind racing with thoughts of Liam and the mistakes he'd made. The memory of his confrontation with Elena haunted him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being punished for his arrogance. Finally, Elena emerged from the operating room, her mask pulled down and a faint smile on her face. The surgery went well. Liam's appendix was removed before it ruptured. He's going to be fine. Daniel felt a wave of relief so intense it nearly brought him to his knees. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you so much." Elena nodded, her expression kind but still professional. "He's in recovery now. You can see him soon." Later that evening, Daniel sat by Liam's bedside, watching his son sleep peacefully. The beeping of the heart monitor was a comforting sound, a reminder that Liam was safe. Elena entered the room quietly, checking Liam's vitals before turning to Daniel. "He's doing well. He'll need to stay here for a couple of days, but he should make a full recovery." Daniel stood, his hands clasped in front of him. "Dr. Martinez, I don't know how to thank you, not just for saving Liam, but for showing me that I needed to change." Elena regarded him for a moment, then sighed. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Harper. What matters is what we do after. I hope this experience has taught you something about humility and respect." Daniel nodded, his eyes earnest. "It has. I promise you I'll do better. For Liam, and for everyone else." Elena gave a small smile. "That's all anyone can ask for. Take care of your son, Mr. Harper, and take care of yourself." As she left the room, Daniel felt a sense of clarity he hadn't known in years. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, he was ready to face it. Not as the arrogant man he had been, but as someone who had learned the value of humility and gratitude. And in that moment, Daniel Harper began to change. Over the next few days, Daniel rarely left Liam's side. He watched as his son slowly regained his strength, his laughter returning as the color came back to his cheeks. The hospital staff noticed a change in Daniel, too. Gone was the brash, dismissive man who had once stormed out of a bookstore. In his place was a father humbled by fear and gratitude, someone who now treated everyone with respect and kindness. One afternoon, as Liam napped, Daniel found himself wandering the hospital corridors. His steps led him to the pediatric ward, where he saw Elena speaking with a young patient and her family. He paused, watching as she knelt to the child's eye level, her voice warm and reassuring. The little girl giggled, and even the parents seemed to relax under Elena's care. When Elena noticed Daniel, she excused herself and approached him. "Mr. Harper," she said, her tone polite but guarded. "How's Liam doing?" "He's doing great," Daniel replied, a genuine smile on his face. "Thanks to you. I wanted to talk to you, if you have a moment." Elena nodded, gesturing to a nearby bench. They sat down, the hum of the hospital around them. Daniel took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "Dr. Martinez, I know I've already apologized, but I feel like I need to say more. What happened at the bookstore, it wasn't just about the books. It was about me. I've spent so much of my life thinking I was better than everyone else, that my success gave me the right to look down on people. But seeing you, how you handled yourself, how you saved my son, it made me realize how wrong I was." Elena listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. When Daniel finished, she spoke softly. "Change isn't easy, Mr. Harper, but recognizing the need for it is the first step. You have a chance now to be the kind of person your son can look up to." Daniel nodded, his eyes glistening. "I want to be that person, for Liam and for myself. I don't know where to start." Elena smiled faintly. "Start small. Treat people with kindness, even when it's hard. Listen more than you speak. And remember that no one is beneath you, no matter their job, their background, or their circumstances." Daniel absorbed her words, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." A week later, Liam was discharged from the hospital, his recovery well underway. Daniel, true to his word, had begun to make changes in his life. He reached out to colleagues he had once dismissed, offering apologies and seeking to rebuild relationships. He even returned to the bookstore, where he apologized to the staff and purchased the books he had knocked over, donating them to a local school. The viral video of the bookstore incident had faded from public attention, but its impact lingered. Daniel's law firm, inspired by his transformation, implemented new policies to promote humility and accountability among its employees. Daniel himself began volunteering at a community center, using his legal expertise to help those who couldn't afford representation. One evening, as he tucked Liam into bed, his son looked up at him with wide eyes. "Dad, are you okay? You've been different lately." Daniel smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Liam's forehead. "I'm more than okay, buddy. I'm trying to be better. For you, and for everyone else." Liam grinned. "I like this version of you." Daniel's heart swelled with love and determination. "Me too, kiddo. Me too." Meanwhile, Elena continued her work at the hospital, her reputation as a skilled and compassionate surgeon growing with each passing day. She never sought recognition, but her actions spoke louder than any award or accolade. The story of her confrontation with Daniel and her subsequent care for Liam became a quiet legend among the hospital staff, a reminder of the power of integrity and kindness. One day, as she walked through the hospital lobby, she was approached by a young medical student. "Dr. Martinez," the student said nervously, "I just wanted to say, you're my hero. The way you stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, it's inspiring." Elena smiled warmly. "Thank you. But remember, being a hero isn't about grand gestures. It's about doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." The student nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I'll remember that." As Elena walked away, she felt a sense of fulfillment. She knew her work was far from over, but she also knew that every small act of courage and compassion had the power to create ripples of change. Months later, Daniel and Elena crossed paths once more, this time at a charity gala supporting underprivileged children's access to healthcare. Daniel, now a board member of the organization, spotted Elena across the room and made his way over to her. "Dr. Martinez," he said, extending his hand. "It's good to see you." Elena shook his hand, her smile genuine. "Mr. Harper, you look well." "I feel well," Daniel replied. "Thanks to you. Not just for saving Liam, but for saving me too." Elena raised an eyebrow. "I didn't save you, Mr. Harper. You saved yourself. I just gave you a nudge in the right direction." Daniel chuckled. "A pretty strong nudge, if I'm being honest. But I'm grateful for it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the gala swirling around them. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully repay you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make a difference. For Liam, for myself, and for people like you who remind us what it means to be human." Elena nodded, her eyes reflecting pride and hope. "That's all anyone can ask for, Mr. Harper. I wish you the best." As they parted ways, Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but he was ready to face them, not as the man he had been, but as the man he was becoming. And Elena, watching him go, felt a quiet satisfaction. She knew that her actions had sparked a change, not just in Daniel, but in the lives he would touch moving forward. For her, that was the greatest reward of all. Years later, Liam Harper stood at the podium of his high school graduation, his voice steady as he addressed his classmates. "My dad always says that life is about choices, the choices we make and the people we choose to be. I've learned that the hard way, but I've also learned that it's never too late to change." In the audience, Daniel wiped away a tear, his heart bursting with pride. Beside him, Elena Martinez smiled, knowing that the ripple effect of that fateful day in the bookstore had touched more lives than she could have imagined. And as the applause filled the auditorium, Daniel leaned over to Elena and whispered, "Thank you for everything." Elena simply nodded, her eyes shining with quiet joy. "You're welcome." And so, the story of Daniel Harper and Elena Martinez became a testament to the power of humility, courage, and the enduring impact of doing what's right, even when it's hard.